Which is why I'm again asking you, at what point, when questions were first raised about the authenticity of this blogger, did you actually begin to put these processes in motion? Why did you almost gloat about the kind of clickbait that you were getting, and reminding everybody that this piece was trending and that it was going all over the place? At what point did your sensibilities kick in about whether you guys had perhaps not done the basics?
Shelley Garland did nothing wrong. Okay guys, so here's the thing. Journalists fucking suck. And they don't suck for the obvious reasons of getting facts wrong or hiding stuff behind political agendas or even paywalling knowledge and then grandstanding over that same knowledge that is not common knowledge, but rather that they have all these qualities and still somehow think they're above us. Now, some, I assume, are good people. And for that reason, I want to encourage you not to send any hate or harassment mentioned to anybody in this video. If you have something to say, just drop it in my comment section. But this is a wild ass story and you might have a different take in the beginning and in the ending of this video. But let me know who you think took the ultimate W in the end. So for my international viewers, Huffington Post, or as it's now known, HuffPost, is an American liberal news aggregator and blog with local and international editions. And it specifically categorizes all of its various posts as such as news and satires and blogs, original content, and they cover all sorts of things like business, politics, entertainment, tech, blah blah blah. They're currently, though, owned by BuzzFeed, and, well, as this poll suggests here, we do not consider them particularly reliable, but the Huffington Post itself didn't do much better without the BuzzFeed brand, now did it? Now, Huffington Post is supposed to represent the liberal outlook as opposed to its very conservative counterpart, and that was kind of the theme throughout. So you'll often find that pieces, blog pieces specifically, are in favor of specific narratives and struggles of the common folk and their identity crisis, identity politics. So today we are faced with an iconic piece that was published in Huffington Post, South Africa, 13 April 2017. Yes, on 13 April 2017. Author Shelley Garland, who is an MA philosophy student at the University of Cape Town, published a piece called "Could It Be Time to Deny White Men the Franchise?" In this blog post, Shelley Garland argued for a very feminist position, which is that white men should be disenfranchised entirely and that their voting rights should be taken away from them. And she states, "If white men no longer had the vote, the progressive cause could be strengthened. It would not be necessary to deny white men indefinitely. The denial of the vote to white men for 20 years, just less than a generation, would go some way to seeing a decline in the influence of reactionary and new liberal ideology in the world. The influence of reckless white males were one of the primary reasons that led to the Great Recession, which began in 2008. This would also strike a blow against toxic white masculinity, one that is long needed." She also states that the arguments for this position is this redistribution of the world's wealth is long overdue, and it's not just South Africa where white males own a disproportionate amount of wealth. While in South Africa 90% of the country's land is in the hands of whites, it's safe to assume these are mainly men, along with 97% of Johannesburg's stock exchange. This is also the norm in the rest of the world. Namibia has similar statistics with regards to land distribution, and one can assume this holds for other assets too. As Oxfam notes, 8 men control as much wealth as the poorest 50% of the world's population. In the United States, 10% of the population, nearly all white, own 90% of all assets. It's likely that these assets are largely in the hands of males. Although statistics by race are difficult to find from other parts of the world, it's very likely that the majority of the world's assets are in the hands of white males, despite them making up less than 10% of the world's population. Now, this was considered a controversial and unpopular take, mostly because white men enjoy the right to vote, and also because it didn't make a lot of sense. It came out of nowhere, and it also had quotes like, "If white men were not allowed to vote, it is unlikely that the United Kingdom would be leaving the European Union. It is unlikely that Donald Trump would now be the president of the United States, and it is unlikely that the Democratic Alliance would now be governing 4 of South Africa's biggest cities." Read! So, South Africans learned from our peers, and we knew exactly what to do. We started tweeting. "The entire white populace suggests the shutdown of Huffington Post. Discrimination is visceral." Why not? Women and minorities were denied the first 100 plus years. This bitch is nuts. How about her white male boss take away her paycheck? How many bras would she burn then? Hashtag crazy bitch. Easy fix. Identify as a white woman. What an idiot. The blogger is suggesting try rights away. This is voter repression. It's against the law. The blogger should spend time in jail. This is sick, sexist, and racist. Real nice, HuffPo. Could it be time to deny white men the franchise? HuffPo writer argues white men shouldn't be allowed to vote and liberalism is bad. Every word of this is nonsense. Okay, so things were looking piss poor and bleak for our protagonist here. Shelley Garland was not having a good time on the internet. She is merely an intellectual and she merely bestowed her wisdoms and advice upon us. It's not her fault we cannot deal with the facts and the logics. So of course, after this blog post was published by the Huffington Post, somebody needed to defend Shelley, of course. Luckily, thank fuck, an Indian woman named Varashni Pillai was actually the editor-in-chief of Huffington Post South Africa who hand-selected this fucking blog, and she was not gonna let the white man tears tell her that her intuition about all of this was incorrect. So she published a response. Garland's underlying analysis about the uneven distribution of wealth and power in the world is pretty standard for feminist theory. It's been espoused in many different ways by feminist writers and theorists for decades now. In that sense, there was nothing in the article that should have shocked or surprised anybody, or so we thought. It would appear that perhaps much of the outcry derives from a very poor reading of the article, or perhaps none at all. Dismantling the patriarchal systems that have brought us to where we are today, a world where power is wielded to dangerous and destructive ends by men, and in particular white men, necessarily means a loss of power to those who hold it, a loss of oppressive power. Those who have held undue power granted to them by patriarchy must lose it for us to truly be equal. This seems blindingly obvious to us. So TLDR, you just hated the fucking article because you're both stupid, sexist, and kind of a little bit of a racist, let's not lie. Now clearly this article was getting a fuck ton of attention. It went viral in the clickbait sense, so much so that the actual editor of HuffPost SA, Sipho Shongane, published charts bragging about the success of it all. But as with anything clickbait, there are ups and downs. So currently the South African discourse was rife with talking about hate speech and whether or not this piece was grounds for something unconstitutional, something undemocratic to call for the disenfranchisement of the white man, and then plainly just fucking racist. So the plot thickened. A writer and editor from Cape Town, Laura Twiggs, looked at the situation and recognized some fuckery amiss. So she began her own private little investigation. This investigation required the laborious hard work of clicking on her profile and seeing that her Twitter account, Shelley Garland, is pretty new, like very recently created. And when she looked up Shelley Garland at the University of Cape Town, she could not find any records. So she popped her a DM, and this is what Shelley Garland said. "Hi, that piece was apparently written by HP and then paraded as an opinion blog to hide their agenda. What was their agenda? You're the reporter." And then she deleted her Twitter account. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it took a mere 30 minutes probably for Laura Twiggs to discover that Shelley Garland is probably not who Shelley Garland appears to be. And she posted all of this publicly. She tried to warn the editor-in-chief of Huffington Post SA, Pillay, our queen that defended this article, that maybe you should not be defending this article because the author is sus as shit, and it kind of seems like you guys didn't do your due diligence in trying to figure out who, what, and where this fucking blog post came from. But Pillay said, "Hush now, white woman. It is my time to shine, and I will defend this fucking piece of garbage trash article to my fucking death, and you will say none of it." Or more eloquently put, she wrote, "This doesn't necessarily mean we agree or endorse everything in Garland's blog. The point of our Voices section is to invite a wide array of voices and views. We hope as reads continue to rack up on this blog that those who are tempted to fire off an angry email to us would first engage with the underlying analysis in Garland's blog." So while Pillay was doubling down on the validity of this article, some people said, okay, well, let's ignore whether or not Garland is sus or real. Let's just look at the facts of this article. And they found that a lot of the actual quote-unquote facts of the article were just empirically verifiably untrue. For example, the claim that 97% of the stocks listed in the JSE stock exchange is owned by white people, mostly men, contradicts the JSE's own fucking figures. And another claim that land is owned in South Africa 90% by white people is also patently false. It's closer to 40-50% of all land is owned by white people. So as you could probably guess, things were not going well at Huffington Post HQ because Shelley Garland was seeming kind of sus and they were getting a lot of hate mail, clearly. And then on top of that, the actual facts were not as much factual, more opinion. So this was not looking good. Like, this was bad for the feminist sisters. This was really fucking bad. And now, to make matters worse, the fucking men got involved. Yes, they sent the actual press ombudsman to investigate whether or not due diligence was done and whether or not this piece was in breach of the Constitution or the press code in any matter. And they found that this piece is horrendous. It should not exist. It should be yeeted and deleted. This is highly offensive and, well, just plain rude. So on the 15th of April, this piece was deleted off of the internet, and you can only find it via archives right now. So this was very embarrassing because Pillay actually doubled down even after being warned that the author herself is sus as shit. And at the same time, every other person had to now denounce this, which was doubly embarrassing. So a bunch of other authors and CEOs and representatives came forth and had to openly say, well, we cannot call for the disenfranchisement of men. And Media24, which is Huffington Post's parent company, had to declare itself outraged by this. And they published this fucking long ass article in which they basically just said this incident was hugely damaging not only to Huffington Post South Africa brand, but also to Media24. Yes, the real victims of the story. But then, in the background, Laura Twiggs was still clicking away, and the story and the plot was thickening, fucking thickening still. So, since nobody cares about the struggle of the Indian woman nor the media's Major L, everybody wanted to know who is Shelley Garland, what happened. So, the Iranian super hackers in South Africa got together and they looked at the email correspondence between HuffPost SA and Shelley Garland in order to find this email. There's no permalink at this point since everything's been yeeted. After it was found that the email was sus, they did the next logical step: reversed image search. And lo and fucking behold, Shelley Garland was found on Facebook at somebody's birthday party. But who the fuck this woman is that hates white men so much that she had to troll her way into getting published in the HuffPost and unfortunately milked the absolute retardation and cognitive impairment of the worst that South Africa had to offer in order to dispel their vision of disenfranchised white men. Who the fuck did this to us? Have our people not suffered enough? Well, lo and behold, I introduce you to the biggest white man hater South Africa has ever known, a deeply traumatized demon, Marius Ruet. Yes, Ruet, a 37-year-old researcher at the Center of Development and Enterprise, the CDE, which is just like a think tank in Johannesburg. When he was confronted with the question of, are you Shelley Garland in drag? I shit you not, the man confirmed it. Yes, he didn't know exactly how to create one of those this is not a real person.com images, so he just he got in drag, and well, the rest is history. Now, Ruet is clearly a simple man with simple tastes, so he was definitely bullied by the internet to explain and apologize for whatever the fuck this existential crisis is. So what he said in his defense to Huffington Post, who ended up interviewing him, ironically enough, he said that he wanted to expose how poor the fact-checking was in South African newsrooms, and he apologized for the damage that he caused. I didn't mean for it to go where it did. There was no intention to go after Varashni, he told Huffington Post. But unfortunately, what Pillay did was so incredibly bad and embarrassing for everybody involved that she was asked to resign. And since this caused a lot of, well, the Indian woman is now having to resign because a white man did a troll meme, he decided to resign as well, probably in solidarity. I don't know. I'm not putting words in his mouth. But essentially, he said what he did is he wrote to a bunch of different people blog posts that are so ridiculous that he just wanted to see what ridiculous piece would pass and by who. He even wrote to the Daily Maverick and they didn't even respond. So he was not expecting anybody to respond. And the fact that the Huffington Post essay not only responded, but they published it and then doubled down and defended it. And even when there was question of the actual author and the qualifications at hand, they still ran with it. So I guess if you believe that the troll was just a concerned troll, then maybe truly good was done. Maybe. It surely did expose the state of journalism. But on the other hand, it could also just be straight up a cock because he was bullied because he's a white man in South Africa that wrote about white men being disenfranchised.
And very recently.
Yeah, the last couple of months.
Yes, at the beginning of April.
Yeah,
so you went to a party dressed as a woman.
Yeah.
And then you used that. Is that where you started getting the idea of doing this?
No, I did, already, like I say, in March already, I think I did, So.
And what catalyzed the idea? If was it a process or an event?
No, it's a process.
A process.
Yeah.
Do you think this? What do you think the outcome of this is? What do you think? Do you think it was good that it happened? How do you judge your actions? Do you think it was a good thing that you did? Do you think you helped society confront issues? Do you think you helped journalism in this country confront issues, or do you feel otherwise?
I think society. I think also the problem is like with that current Twitter mobs and whatever. Then I think people also like anger is like amplified when it doesn't need to be. And I think that's part of the problem with Twitter actually. But I think maybe I did raise some good points with journalism in South Africa. I mean, I've seen other journalists saying like it should never have been published because it was a silly piece, and it was a silly piece. So
when I look at this video, I don't see somebody who wants to sincerely prove a point and came and conquered. I see a troll that sees the opportunity and how journalists got because they had a specific agenda that they thought was worth publishing. So much so that when we revisit the DM exchange with Laura Twiggs, there was some conspiracy going on for about 12 hours during that day where people thought that the whole Shelley Garland was actually made up by Huffington Post themselves because they wanted to write this piece about white men being disenfranchised. And it seems like Shelley at the time was leaning into the meme, I guess, or trying to shift blame. Trying to possibly realize like, oh fuck, I'm getting doxxed as fuck. I didn't even get a VPN. I am so fucking screwed. I'm just an Afrikaner. I did not prepare for this shit at fucking all. These are my people. On the journalism side of this, well, of course, as I mentioned, she already resigned. And on the 22nd of April, 2017, after all of this, the South African Press Ombud determined that this fake article, nonetheless, was still amounted to hate speech that she had authorized to be published. So the HuffPost SA as well as Media24 had to comply with this ruling. And despite the public concerns over whether or not this ruling was sound because it was a troll article and whether or not it did meet the criteria of hate speech, they had to comply. Now, Pillay, on the other hand, is a journalist, which means she doesn't take ratios or L's, she hands them out. So she decided to appeal the ruling in her personal capacity. And a full panel of the appeals board of the Press Ombud overturned that finding following the hearing. So, rip. But her usefulness was not over. She decided to opt into an interview on Radio 702 in which pretty much everybody ripped her a new fucking arsehole and explained to her how the fact that she got fired was not because she got trolled extensively, but because she actually did fail in her job. She didn't do her due diligence, she didn't fact check, she didn't even check the fucking author.
Farashni, are you going to fall on your sword?
Karima, I think it's premature for me to make any comments now on what John has said.
Why is it premature, considering that you did do what he accuses you of, in the sense that when you were the editor of the Mail and Guardian, you had to climb down on your front page story regarding the DA. You are now at Huffington Post. You admitted that you did not look at the identity of this particular blogger, that you didn't have the necessary checks and balances in place to check the veracity of the information. Why would you say it's premature to talk about this? Should you not, as a very first sign of the fact that you want to restore the credibility of your site, step aside?
I'll definitely consider it.
And since we love our drop of irony, it should also be noted that she published an article on HuffPost SA just a few months earlier under a deliberately clickbait title stating Donald Trump praises Jacob Zuma as the best ever, in which she denoted exactly how to spot fake news and how easy it is and the telltale signs of fake news, under which one of the headings that she herself read and put there was that you need to fact check the actual author. So major L's, and I want everybody to think of this as not a South African L, but a journalism L as a whole, and more so related to Huffington Post. Any single time that we can rag on Huffington Post for deliberately being an L, we should take a time and do it. And then also remember that sometimes people with too much free time do significantly more deeper research by clicking 3 times or reverse image searching, rather so than actual paid journalists. But fuck it, let me not accidentally confuse you into thinking that I know shit about fuck, because I don't. Pila. Just in case you think that it's a problem with politics and not with journalists specifically, Fox News quote tweeted this article and they didn't provide any context in the sense that it was written for and by South Africans. So Americans thought this was about American based solely on the title, and here are some choice tweets. Oh my god, this white privilege garbage needs to stop. America first. If you don't like the rules, please leave and go back to where you came from. There will be a war. This is shameful to disregard the US Constitution. Thank God for the Electoral College. 53% of white women voted for Trump, so we'd be screwed either way. So honestly, who do you think is happier here? Do you think Pillay is happy because she doubled down on her woke moralist bullshit? Or do you think these people are happier as they are moral fagging towards a fucking computer that doesn't care and is not even based in reality? Or option number 3, Marius Ruud for pulling off a fucking epic troll, lol 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 lol. Politics, not even once.